Welcome to VOLIFE. My name is Toby Ricketts from Gravy for the Brain Oceania, and on this video podcast we talk to the big people in the world of voiceover and entertainment, really. We've had agents, we've had voices, we've had all kinds of people on the podcast, movers and shakers. And today's guest certainly does move and shake a lot on the internet, that's for sure. It's Paul Strikwerda. Did I say that
shaking already?
Be very afraid. How are you there? It's very early where you are, is that right?
Yes, it is 5 a.m. But I think we should start off by wishing Mel Blanc a very happy birthday. Because it's his birthday today.
Very good. How appropriate. Oh, wonderful.
Yes, in fact, I was called by Dutch National Radio a couple of hours ago. They have a morning show, and they wanted to talk about Mel Blanc. And I said, why do you want to talk about Mel Blanc today? Well, I said, don't you know? I said, don't I know what? Well, it's his birthday. You should know. You're a voiceover. Who is Mel Blanc, and why should we talk about him? Well, you called me. And he died 33 years ago, but it's pretty amazing that 33 years later, people in the Netherlands still remember him and want me to talk about him, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a testament to sort of like what kind of, like how voice artists can touch people, really. You know, they can, like the voices of all of these characters that they know and love. And it's still like the same these days. We've got video game characters who just like, they'll do one character and then go on, tours for years on the back of that passion that the fans have, you know?
I think it's always fascinating. If you stop some people in the street and say, can you name 5 Hollywood actors? I think they can rattle them off straight away, 5 popular actors. But when you ask them to name one voice actor, there's probably one name that comes up, and that's probably Mel Blanc.
Or Don LaFontaine.
The rest, they will draw a blank. But that's the part of our profession, that we are kind of the anonymous, disembodied voices that people hear but don't know who we are and what we do and stuff like that. But I think it's a big tribute to Mel Blanc. And they asked me, why do you think he's so popular? And I said, who doesn't love cartoons, You can love or hate your favorite movie star. There's this big Johnny Depp thing going on at the moment of our recording. And some people love him, some people hate him. But I have never met somebody who hates Mel Blanc or the characters that he voices. So that's pretty unique. And I think it's also wonderful that we can enjoy someone like Mel Blanc with different generations, because I have a daughter, she's 19, I'm 58. My father-in-law, who is 90 years old, lives with us. And our favorite pastime together, 3 generations, is to watch Looney Tune cartoons. It's all Mel Blanc. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And,
how would it have been different without his voice in there? Like those characters just wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah. I told the interviewer yesterday, just imagine watching like Daffy Duck or even Tom and Jerry or Woody Woodpecker, Roadrunner, all these classic cartoons. Turn the sound on, you can't hear anything. What's left of it? It's just images, and it's really it's nothing's left of it. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
And in those days, I know you wanted to talk about me, but I think Mel Blanc is more interesting. So let's make this interview a Mel Blanc interview. Sorry, people.
So that's Mel Blanc's journey through life. We're here to talk more about your journey. Of course, people might know you as the Nethervoice. That's your big your website. You're a prolific blogger and social media-ite. So do you want to tell us about like your journey into voice acting? Because you've got some sort of strong opinions on sort of training and how people get into voiceover. But how did
strong opinions? What do you mean? I have no strong opinions. That gets me into trouble. You're trying to get me into trouble. Every time I voice a strong opinion, I get a big backlash. So let's do it all over again. No, I think I started like a lot of voice actors did, because as a child, I loved to imitate people, and that got me into trouble too, because the first instance that I can remember of me imitating somebody rather successfully was the first year of elementary school. And we had a teacher with a very weird voice. And she talked like this, a little bit like Julia Childs. But her name was Mrs. Dronkers. And dronken in Dutch means inebriated, drunk, dronkers, drunk. So I talked like this, and I said, well, to me, she sounds like she's always drunk. Not knowing that she was just about to come into the classroom. And she said, Mr. Strikwerda, in the corner with you, you troublemaker. And what she did was something that people couldn't do these days anymore, but she took a big Band-Aid, put it over my mouth, and I had to stand in the corner for an hour or so. And everybody laughed at me. Oh, Paul, with his silly voices. That's my first appearance, I think, as a voice actor. And it didn't deter me. And my father was a minister, and I loved imitating him on his pulpit, and he didn't like that either. But nevertheless, I persisted, and I kept on doing that because I think there's something so fascinating about a voice. Our voice is like our fingerprint; it's completely unique. And I remember doing these. What do you call them? My father and I had this hobby. We were building models. This was in the days, I'm dating myself now, where models weren't these nice plastic elaborate things that you glue together, but they were made out of cardboard. So you had to cut them up and put them together. So I had a whole village of models in my bedroom, put them on a shelf, and I invited my family around me on the bed, and I had a flashlight, and I put the light on the different models, and I started telling a story about the people living in those houses, what they would sound like, what their lives were like. And later on, I did radio plays with an old tape recorder, an old Philips cassette recorder. And I had lots of instruments, because I also love music and play different instruments. Instruments aligned around me for the sound effects. And I read stories like King Arthur and the Black Knight, or The Five, or all these famous kids' books. I'd reenact them all by me, directed by me, voices by Paul Strikwerda, voice characterization, as they would say with Mel Blanc, and all the sound effects. And I think that's how I got my start. Now, fast forward, the small boy grows up, and I was 17 years old. I was studying musicology, out of all things, in Holland. And one of my best friends had an uncle who was in the radio business. He was a news and current affair presenter, and he said, my radio station is holding a contest for young kids who want to be involved in youth radio. And as sort of a joke at a party, all our friends said, you know what, we're going to all apply, and probably nothing will come out of it, but it could be fun, because I was always fascinated by radio, by voices, and I said, I want to have a look behind the scenes. So if this is an opportunity for me, and maybe I could work for the classical music department, being a musicologist and stuff like that. So I applied, and much to my surprise, they hired me on the spot to start doing youth radio programs. And one of the benefits was that I was mentored by the people who were the veterans in the business, the people that I had grown up with. And it wasn't only radio, it was television as well. So as of age 17, I was a voice on Dutch radio, and later a face on Dutch television. I can't believe it, this face, but they wanted me. But later on, we decided that I had a better face for radio, of course. But that's how I got my semi-professional start. And then I had another big break, because at that time, the Dutch army still was. Right. So we had an army of conscripts. I think that's what you call it. And so I had to go, but I didn't feel like going to the army, because I'm not a big fan of shooting people with guns, and I became a conscientious objector. So instead, I had to do social service, which is fine by me. And I found a radio and television company that was enlisting people who wanted to do social service by working for a radio and television station. Isn't that great? So when it was my time to go into the army, I did my social service at that radio and television station. So that gave me another 2 years of full-time professional experience, doing all kinds of things, producing, presenting, being a roaming reporter, every aspect of the radio and television business. And after that, I got myself a free education, courtesy of the state of the Netherlands.
Wow.
And I loved it so much that I flunked out of musicology. And I said, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be in radio. And so that really became the start of what later was my voiceover career.
Was there any point, like a lot of people, where you were sort of doing voice work on the side, or it wasn't making up like a majority of your income, and then you thought, like, there's a leap of faith that happens with every voice artist, I think, where you get to the point, like, it's done as a hobby for enough time, and you think, I really want to make a go of this, but I don't have the time to apply to it. So you think, well, I'm just going to do it for 6 months and see what happens. Was there a point at which you reached with that?
Yeah, I was done with the whole radio and TV business by the age I was 38, because I was working in the news and current affairs department, and most news is not good news. Unfortunately, that's why it's news. And it's kind of sickening to have to deal with that every day. So I decided to take a break from broadcasting and got a training as an NLP practitioner. That stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming or Neuro-Linguistic Psychology. It's the stuff that guys like Tony Robbins teach. You got to believe in yourself. It's all about changing your mind, changing your life, and helping others to change their mind and their lives as well, which was incredibly empowering, powerful stuff. And I became a trainer in that methodology. And I was invited by a training institute in the United States to become one of their lead teachers. So I made my first leap of faith was leaving the Netherlands behind, my friends and my family, packing my bags and moving to the United States of America and joining an institute there. Now, the person who was running the institute had said it was very successful, which in fact it was not. So while I was there wasn't as much work as they said they would offer me, and I had to do something on the side. And I said, this I've always loved working with my voice, so let's see if I can do something with my voice. And I found an ad in the paper, and it said, Mike Lemon Casting Philadelphia is having an open casting call. I said, well, this could be my opportunity to fame and fortune. And so I knocked on the door of Mike Lemon Casting, and Mike Lemon was the big guy behind the movies of M. Night Shyamalan, like The Sixth Sense with Haley Joel Osment, where he says, I see dead people. Remember that movie? Mm-hmm. And he's been casting them ever since. So he was a big name in our area. And when I opened the door of his casting agency, there were about 1,000 people in the hallway. They all thought they were the next best thing since sliced bread. But most of them were like ventriloquists and jugglers and ballet dancers and singers. And there was only one guy who thought he could do voiceovers, and that was me. So they looked at my application and said, oh, voiceovers. We only have one voiceover, so I was sent straight to the voiceover director. We had tea and scones and a lovely conversation, and she started directing me, gave me a few scripts, and she noticed immediately that I knew how to work a microphone, knew how to interpret a script, do different voices, characters, and she said, you know what, I want you to meet Mike Lemon. And so I did, and he worked with me, and they hired me on the spot. Basically because there was no one else, I think. But they said, Paul, you sound unlike anybody else we have in our database of voices, because you have this weird European thing going on. And at that time, this was, mind you, about 23 years ago now, I sounded very British because that's how the Dutch children learned their English, the Queen's English. So I sounded like this stuffy professor all the time. Whenever we need a stuffy English professor, kind of an Attenborough type of guy, you are our man. And that's how I started. I started by imitating, I think now with a very bad British accent, but Americans don't know one accent from the other anyway. So they hired me. And I was hired. I remember my first job was for Hershey Parks, which is a big theme park, Hershey chocolates, the most awful chocolates in the world. But never mind. They have a theme park like Disney World. It's all about chocolate, of course, and rides. And I was the voice of one of the rides, and it led to many other things. But back to your question, 5 minutes later. Interrupt me when you need to, okay, please, because I have a tendency to go very on and on, even without coffee. But I did not quite believe in myself, because I said, I'm Dutch, just this unknown Dutch guy in the United States. And in Holland, it's very easy to be famous because there's only 16 or 17 million people in the Netherlands. That's it, So in Holland, most people knew who I was, but in the United States, there's 250 or 60 or 70 million people there. And nobody knew who I was. Nobody had ever heard of me. Nobody cared really. And these were in the days where we didn't really have social media. I didn't have a website. I had one agent, and I didn't want to sit by the phone all the time waiting for the agent to call for another thing. So I wasn't sure whether I could do this or pull this off. And we didn't have home studios either. So it was more of a wait and see game. But then this whole arrangement with the training company for whom I was going to train people to become NLP practitioners wasn't working out very much. I said, well, I got to do something on the side at least to get by, because otherwise I might as well go back to Holland. And at that time, I was in a romantic relationship in the United States, and I didn't want to go back to Holland. So I had to make a choice and said, what am I going to do? I'm going to take this seriously, or will I stay an amateur forever and keep it as a hobby? And some people still think that I should have kept it as a hobby, but I decided, no, I'm going to give this a go. And then I started my whole publicity campaign all around the Nethervoice, the voice of the Netherlands, Paul Strikwerda. And look at us now, we're talking about it. I'm talking to somebody in New Zealand for all things.
Yes,
working for a company called Gravy for the Brain.
Exactly. Who thought up that crazy idea?
I know, but you got to be crazy to be in this business, don't you?
You do. You've got to kind of, and I think your thing is exactly right about standing out. Like, there's definitely something to be said for, like, the thing that gets you the foot in the door. And for me, obviously, like, the fact that I was, like, I'm in New Zealand. I'm in the middle of nowhere in rural New Zealand. And that is a good enough reason to give agents a call, because they're like, wow, that's different. That's kind of, let's hear this guy out, And then if you have the talent to back that up, it's gotten you in the door. So it's like, that's definitely worked for me. So I often tell people, it's like, you have to find that part of yourself that people find, like, interesting, like an odd stone on the beach or whatever. And that's definitely been your secret
What I tell my students is, what's normal for you is probably special for someone else. And you don't recognize it because it's normal. That's why you need someone else to recognize that. And, I got a hint in my short and unglamorous career as a waiter. Yes, I've been a waiter in the United States as well to make ends meet. And frankly, I didn't have I didn't have a work permit at that time. So and it took years to become a U.S. citizen. And when I finally applied, we had 9/11, and then it took even longer because they didn't want all those foreigners in the country. So I had to do something to make a couple of bucks, and I became a waiter. And people loved me for some reason, not because who I am, but because of the way I sounded. And we had this game where the people I was waiting on had to guess where I was from. And I said, if you guess where I'm from, I'll buy you a free dessert. And I did waiting on the side for about 2 years, which was another life lesson I will eagerly forget. But it was fun too, because you have lots of different people in your restaurant, lots of different personalities, lots of different accents, and you learn how to sell stuff. When the kitchen says, "Can you push dish 303? We need to sell the chicken today." And so I could talk people into ordering dishes and buying basically more from me than they were willing to spend. So it was an education in selling. And so I am losing my train of thought. Okay, waitering, making money in the United States, accents, getting a work permit. Help me out again.
Well, I guess we could fast forward into, because next thing I was going to ask you is about, like, where, because you're in the United States now. Yeah. How much of your work, are you doing for United States companies? How much is back in Europe? And, like, where does this work come from? It's like you're kind of all about self-generated work, and agents probably come into it as well, because I know you're represented. And whether you fish in the P2Ps or not. Occasionally. Fiverr, maybe.
What is Fiverr?
Just
don't say the word Fiverr. Well, I dabble here and there, because that's one thing, you can't put all your eggs in a basket.
Absolutely,
in one basket. That's never going to work. And I became a freelancer to be free, to be an independent contractor. So I've always been a freelancer, by the way. From the very first moment I started in radio, I was my one-man business. So I had learned how to drum up my business and to stand out a little bit, if you will. So I have about 12 agents, most of whom I never hear from. And when they do it, they usually think I'm like Holland and Poland. They think Holland and Poland are the same, so they give me Polish scripts or Pennsylvania Dutch scripts. Paul, you're Dutch. You live in Pennsylvania, so you must be Pennsylvania Dutch. So let's do this in German, huh? The really red German accent, and I still can't do it. But so I came not to rely on these things. And to everybody who's watching at the beginning of his or her career, some people may say, "Well, once you've got an agent, you have landed." And it's true, they gave me my first break, but that will dry out at some point. You cannot rely on your agents, because if you do that, then you're pretty much doomed. The only person you can rely on is you. My wife has this wonderful tile next to her desk. It says, behind every strong woman is herself, which is nice because they say behind every strong man is his wife or a woman or something like that. But she says behind every strong woman is herself. I think behind every strong voiceover is him or herself. It's got to be you. The buck stops where you are. And you got to make a lot of noise, otherwise people won't hear you. It's the whole deal is you're a needle in a ginormous haystack. And what you need to do is make that needle as sharp and shiny as possible so that you become hard to ignore. And that's what I set out to do. Maybe arrogant at the time, but I had nothing to lose. So I thought, somebody told me that I have a very unique accent. I'm going to leverage that accent. I'm going to make use of that. So I marketed myself as the ultimate European voice, which is very boisterous because Holland, the Dutch people are very modest. You don't talk about yourself. So I had to learn how to talk myself up in public.
America's a pretty good place to learn that.
Oh my gosh, yes, in the United States. That was the hardest thing for me because, everybody said, Paul, tone it down. I have to tell my Dutch colleagues also, you got to get out of your shell, sell yourself. Otherwise, you won't be noticed. Yeah, but what if people think I'm so arrogant? And no, you're not arrogant. You're just proud of your accomplishments. You need to rephrase the way you think about yourself, the way you sell yourself.
In New Zealand, we call that tall poppy syndrome. Where the tall poppies get cut off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So I had to learn that. And one of the first things I did was I built a website. I'm not a website builder, so if you would look at my first website today, you would just pass me by because it was very bare bones. And the only thing that I did that was different at the time was I started blogging. And I always loved to write, and I first started as notes to self, really, because I didn't know who I was blogging for or writing to, if anybody would be interested. But I thought, that apart from a weird accent, that's something that I think I'm rather good at. So I started documenting my journey. And then, thank goodness, social media started, and I became a member of a couple of groups. I don't even know if Facebook had started at that time, but there were a couple of groups on the interweb all about voiceovers, and I started posting links to my blog, and some people read my stuff and commented favorably on it, and I thought, maybe I'm onto something here. And I've been doing that for the past 17, 18 years now, and it's grown and grown and grown and grown. And today I can say that my blog is the landing page of my website and the single source for my notoriety, if you will, because one thing that the Dutch have in common is that they don't mince their words. They're known throughout the world as being rather blunt because they're honest. They don't want to be nasty or rude, but they're just honest. And they like to share their opinion. And everybody's got an opinion in Holland, and they're not afraid to share that with you. And I didn't know that made me different because I was just writing as me, being blunt about the industry, about the setbacks and all the empty promises that are being made and all these people that pretend that they are something and they're not. And, there's so much humbug going on and hot air. That a lot of emperors without clothes. And I thought it was my service to the community of voiceovers to expose these emperors without clothes and all the hot air that was going on, including hot air about me, because I always try not to take myself too seriously. But somehow that took off, and I got myself a name. What this does is once your blog gets a regular amount of viewers, it gets noticed by the Yahoos and the Googles in the world. They say, hey, there's somebody who does something relevant, apparently, something that's interesting and that people want to check out again and again and again and again. Because the problem with most websites is that, voiceover websites, is that they're the same every day, every month, every year. I had some people that I work with voice actor websites a lot and they build the greatest websites for voice actors. And once they build a website, then 5 years later, they get a call and say, can you please design another website for me because mine is not working? Well, why isn't it working? Well, nobody's coming. Why is nobody coming? Well, because you didn't change anything. Why would people come back once they visited your site? So it's like fish in a fish market. If you don't change it, it starts to rot. Nobody wants to come back. So that's the great thing a blog does, if it's done well, I think, if it's interesting. you got to be interesting for people to be interested. So every week, consistently, through thick and thin, and in for better or worse, and sickness and health, I've been writing this blog. I'm married to it, as you can tell. And every week, to my astonishment still, people are coming back for more. And that has given me what they call a domain authority. A domain authority is a number between 0 and 100, indicates how popular your website is, based on the number of backlinks. Whenever somebody links to your story, it means that they pass it on to another website, and then to another website, because it's an indicator for Google to say that people like this stuff. They like to share it. And my website is one of the most shared websites, especially the blog articles in the voiceover community. In fact, Joe Davis, a couple of years ago, Joe Davis is the man behind voice actor websites, and he is an analytics guy. He is all about SEO, search engine optimization. He said, Paul, I just ran a search and I found out that your website is the single most popular individual voiceover website in the entire world. I said, what? How did that happen? Well, I said, it's all about your blog, man. It's all about the blog. The single most visited individual website. It's not like a Voice 123 or the other big ones that I shall not name. Of course, they've got millions of visitors. I can never compete with that. But that impressed me greatly. And that tells you something, because I never set out to become the best or the most popular blog or the most visited website. It's nethervoice.com, by the way, if you've never visited nethervoice.com. New blog every week. But that's the power of social media. And here's the side effect, and now I'm finally coming to the answer to your question. When your website becomes popular, what happens when people type in a search for Dutch voiceover or European voiceover or neutral English voiceover? My name comes up in the top 10 on the first couple of pages. And that's how clients find me. So I tell people, attract clients. You have to become a magnet yourself. Instead of chasing clients, have clients chase you. And all thanks to my blog, I think, that's what's happened. That
Absolutely.
People find my website, my blog. They start reading. They start listening to the demos, and they end up hiring me for some reason.
I mean, and that's what Google is noticing. Like you mentioned SEO, and I went on a really big SEO journey from about 3 years ago. And made improvements. Like, it's all about content now, and it's got to be content that people have to find interesting. Like, it can't just be pages of nothing speak or voiceover repeated a million times. Like, it's got to be evolving, changing, multimedia, backlinks, as you say, and then Google takes it all into account. And the more you can, like I'd say to people with voiceover websites, the more relevant you can make yourself to someone like wanting to find a voice or find out about voiceover, then the better success you're going to have, because that's what Google is trying to intelligently do, is find out the best answer for people. If you can be the answer, then it's brilliant. So you mentioned social media towards the end there in terms of how that stuff is spread, and you're very visible on social media, on Twitter, all of the sort of the big things, commenting on things all the time. I don't know how you find the time of the day to do it.
I can't keep my big mouth shut.
Is it a valid marketing strategy to be doing little videos every day? I see people on LinkedIn and on Instagram and stuff doing these like videos from the studio all the day. And I'm starting to do a bit more of it. But do you think social media, do you think the blogging is more important than the social media stuff? Or do you need both these days?
I definitely need both, because if you make a lot of noise and nobody hears it, you don't exist. So I make noise, and then I make sure everybody hears it using social media. Is it a good strategy? Well, yes and no. It really depends on how you use it. And I still have to discover the world of videos, because I know that on Instagram, and I'm very active on Instagram, Reels, the videos, the short videos like TikTok, they're all the thing, that they get preferential treatment. So one of the things that I really should do is become more proficient at producing videos. But it's much easier to write a piece of 2,000 words than to produce a minute of video.
I think the opposite. You see, I think it would take me days to write 2,000 words. And it would take me about 6 minutes to do a video. So maybe we could swap stories sometime.
Oh yeah, you got to play your strengths. That's true. It's different for different people. And but that's one aspect of myself and my social media exposure that I have yet to explore. Unfortunately, I moved to the Northeast Kingdom in Vermont lately. I've been here since November 5th. And it's this outpost of America 5 miles from the Canadian border where nothing ever happens. And I like to keep it that way.
Yeah.
But the nature is stunning. So I started posting little nature pictures of where I live and what I do. And people seem to like that. So maybe I could become the Paul Strikwerda of Vermont now, narrating my own nature videos.
Exactly. Yeah, you
Lo
can
and
do
behold,
the Dutch
the
Edinburgh.
Like from Megog, yes. I could do that. But what I tell my students, because I have a few students here and there, and I call it the coaching that I do is I help people to stand out as a voiceover, become that shiny needle in the haystack, right? And I tell people, what you should start doing first is do what you love already doing. So for me, my love is writing. For other people, it could be photography. Some people, it's videography. Some people like to draw cartoons. But do something that you love because it won't take you as much time and it will give you pleasure. And when you are finding pleasure in something, it shows and people hear it in your voice. So do what you love to do and make a mark that way. Create yourself an audience, and then you can drag themselves into the world of voiceovers as well.
Yeah, it gives you energy. I think that's the key thing. Like I find with, if you do something that you love every day, like voiceover, it gives you energy to do other things. And then that's like it's self-sustaining in a way, whereas it doesn't take your energy to keep doing it.
Yes, because it's such a crazy business that we're in, really. The uncertainty, but the variety as well. With uncertainty comes the variety as well, because you never know what tomorrow will bring, if it even brings anything. And sometimes, I don't know what to do, because I have weeks where nothing happens, really. You ask me, well, how do you produce all that content? When you see me producing a lot of content, usually nothing happens in the world of voiceovers. Paul is trying to desperately stay busy.
Yeah, it's very true. Like I've learned to. I used to get really nervous as a subcontractor or an independent contractor when you have those quiet weeks and you think, that's it. Maybe the dream's over, and you get the imposter syndrome, and you think, that's it. Yeah. That's it. Career's over. I'll have to go down to the work at the supermarket. But I've really learned. It always comes back. It always comes back, and it comes back with a vengeance usually. Yes. And so now I really enjoy those weeks where I have no work, and I'm just like, now I can catch up on this stuff. I can do this stuff I've been meaning to do. And it's like, as an independent contractor, you don't get 4 weeks of paid leave a year, so you kind of make that your paid leave in a way. So I've learned to embrace that.
That's the ridiculous thing about living in the United States, where it's all about work. And I'm a European. I'm used to at least 6 weeks of summer holidays, vacations, as they say here, or 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. And the Americans say, "What? You leave work for more than 2 weeks, and you don't leave your phone number and email address with your employer? He doesn't get in touch with you. You don't get in touch with your business. What way is that to conduct a business? You always have to be able to be reached and called upon." Said, no. My vacation, that's preventative health care. When I want to take off, I'm not taking any voiceover kits with me, no travel kits, nothing. I want to be there for my family and myself to recharge the batteries, because if I don't, then I'll go crazy. Yeah. So this whole thing about work, always being available, I don't buy into that at all. I'm telling you, it's such a relief. Because I started doing that after I had my stroke 3 years ago, and that was an eye-opening experience, because I was one of those people that was always chasing his dream, and client after client, and the more I did, the better I felt about myself. And I said, I don't want my self-image to be linked by what I do. What I do is just an aspect of who I am, and who I am is more important than what I do. So I really was working around the clock, and I was in my studio, and I tell this story a lot, but I'll keep it short. But I was in my studio, and I woke up on the floor of my studio, and I was partially paralyzed, and I had never experienced anything like that. I had a terrible headache, and I could barely speak because this part of my face was paralyzed. And I recognized my gosh, I'm having a stroke. But I was by myself in the home, in my soundproof studio. I said, this is the end. This is it. I was waiting for the tunnel and the light to show up. It didn't, unfortunately. But I said, this is time to meet my maker, because I thought I was going to die. And obviously I didn't die. I'm still here. But to cut a long long story short, I was supposed to be at a meeting, and my wife was expecting me. She got a bad feeling, and she asked the local police force to do a welfare check on me, and they found me.
Wow, that's good. Because the door opened inward, isn't that right? So you couldn't actually get. So the door opened inward.
Yes,
I remember reading the blog at the time.
I was leaning against the door. It was just an ordeal to get it open and to get me out. I was almost suffocating because I didn't have any ventilation in the room.
Yeah.
Very smart. Always have a studio with ventilation, people, because it might not end up well for you. Yeah. But it took me about a year to get back to me old self. To get back to my old self was weird. I became a little bit weird and strange. But I decided. I looked at life and said, it's also relative. All this so-called fame and working for big clients and building a name for yourself. What's going to be left of it at the end of the day? Is it worth it? What's it worth? Is it worth dying for in the studio on the floor and getting a stroke for? And I said, forget it. I don't want that. I'm no longer going to chase clients. Let them do the hard work for a change. Let them change me.
It's interesting because I remember when I read that blog, it was of special interest because I'm one of the things I do in my spare time is I'm a volunteer ambulance officer at the local ambulance centre. So I go out on calls, and I've gone to people with strokes and stuff. So I was reading it. I was I was fascinated about being a voiceover and that whole thing of the booth and like how that all worked and stuff. But you're so right that like when you're confronted with those life and death situations, even if it's vicarious and you're just sort of present, you do have this whole. It just shifts you into this other level, this top-down view, and you're like, what's really important? Like it's really refreshing. And like things like I always wear my seatbelt, no matter how short the drive is, because you just see things like people didn't wear the seatbelts, and it's just like that tiny little action makes a huge difference. And just like having your cell phone on you all the time, like you say in your booth, you could just dial or something. So it's that was a very interesting article.
Hello.
And it was
So go on.
Yeah. So are you primarily doing like European voices, like Dutch voiceovers? Are you called on to do different Euro voices? What's the character of the work you do? Is it character work?
Well, you're obviously talking to a character, but most of the stuff is interesting because it's I'd say about 80% of the work I do is boring e-learning, which I try to make interesting. And my most in-demand accent is what they call neutral accent. Neutral English doesn't really exist, but it's kind of, you listen to the voice and say, where's this person from? I don't know. Is he British? Is he from the United States of America? Is he from New Zealand? No, there's an in-between land of weirdness that I have cornered that market for us, it seems. So if they want a voice that doesn't sound like Yankee or stiff upper lip Brit or something like that, I am called upon. So it's a lot of international business stuff. And lately the pharmaceutical companies have discovered me, and they think that I sound like some intellectual or somebody who can tell about the latest breakthrough medicine or therapy. And they sometimes they want it to make more British, more American. I can also do a Dutch accent, so we talk like this, like the normal Dutch people do. The Dutch people have trouble pronouncing the TH, so they say this and that thing instead of this and that. So I was talk to the client, what kind of poll do you want to have today on the menu? And I try to give that to them. And I'd say about 80% of my work is in English, and then about 20% is still in Dutch. One of the last things I did a couple of days ago was a museum tour. I like doing guided tours as well, because it's kind of a relaxed space. You take people on a journey. It's all about the journey, not the destination. And this is all about global warming, so it was socially relevant as well. So 80% is like that, and then every now and then is the odd commercial. That's so funny. When I first got my start, I sounded very British, and I was asked to be the voice of the Beatles musical. They have a jukebox musical called Let It Be. And instead of hiring a Brit, they hired me, a Dutchman, to be the voice of the ultimate British musical on Broadway, which is fun because the next time I came to New York, I was in the back of the taxi and I could hear my own promo, which rarely happens. Anyway, so I do that too. I still do Attenborough a little bit. My impersonation is much sought after.
Yeah, every third job, it seems, on the beta plays is for Attenborough, sounded like.
Gosh, yes. But again, it was very fun because I'm one of the very few Dutch voiceovers that has had a national commercial in the United States. Not as me, but as somebody talking a little bit like Richard Attenborough, about Hawaiian French toast from IHOP, the International House of Pancakes. Yeah.
It's always fun and feels kind of naughty that like I've done national spots in the US as an American voiceover, and just thinking that I'm just in the middle of nowhere in the studio in New Zealand, and like it's going out to every home in America. It's kind of get a kick out of
They say
that.
about the imposter syndrome. Well, we are imposters,
We
aren't
are
we?
the imposters, exactly.
That's acting. Acting is being the good imposter, and the best imposters get the Hollywood Walk of Fame star, and they get an Oscar.
Yeah.
The best liars are the best actors. You know, that's
it's true.
what
The
we
most
do for a
convincing.
living. We get
Yeah,
paid to lie, to
exactly.
pretend. We're pretenders. Yes.
So we're on the VOLIFE podcast, brought to you by Gravy for the Brain Oceania, and you've interacted with Gravy for the Brain over the years. You've a very
Many
fond
times.
opinion of us. Why is that?
Yes, absolutely. This is a business about personalities and about connections, personal connections. And the first time I met Peter Dixon and Hugh Edwards was at VO Atlanta. And I've always had a thing for the Brits, I have to say. Holland being close to the UK, me working for the BBC for a year, which is one of the highlights of my career, if you may say. I've always had a fondness for the British language and British drama and things like that. So I have this natural affinity for anything British. So I don't know what would have happened if Gravy for the Brain would have been an Austrian company or German company. It might not have hit it off very well, but you never know. But anyway, I like these guys instantaneously.
Nice. Oh, well, that's a good
And
try.
I didn't even know what they were up to because who knows what Gravy for the Brain does? It's
Yeah.
where does the name even come from, you know?
Yeah. Is it a food company?
I don't know. But it makes for great puns because I wrote this whole story about my sidetrack here, but about my recovering from stroke. And I end it with that God had different plans for me, that it wasn't my time to go yet. Because I was too brainy for the grave.
That's very good. That's very good. I like it. Yeah.
I love playing with language, no matter what language it is. But so we met and we hit it off, as they say over here. We hit it off really well, and then started to find out what these guys were doing. They were offering these amazing trainings, and really, what I liked is about they don't seem to, if I'm mistaken, let me know. They don't seem to run a get rich quick scheme. This is really in-depth training that was not there to exploit you, because there's so many other companies, as you know, that are preying on vulnerable hopefuls that think they can have a career in voiceovers, and if only you buy their package, which includes 10 demos for free, they'll promise you the world, and you end up on an island trying to get off. And how did I get there? You know, so what I found is that this is a company that is really working in a very ethical manner. And going where others have not gone. They go deeper, more in depth and beyond, and they keep on supporting you no matter what level. Sounds like a commercial. No matter what level of your career you are, but it's true. And this is not run by pretenders. This is with people like Peter, like you, who huge resumes. So they're backed up by experience, they're backed up by connections, and they have formed this whole network. And what I love above all is that, you know, colleagues become friends, and that's something I love about the voiceover world in general, but especially with the people that Gravy of the Brain surrounds itself with. You feel like you've never seen each other, but you know you have something wonderful in common. Silliness, of course, because nobody takes themselves too seriously, hence the name probably, which I also like. They don't pretend to be better than they are. But it's just fun to hang around with too, and anything that's fun makes it more easy to learn. So it's this perfect combination of being thoroughly intrigued, thoroughly entertained, but also educated at the same time. I think it's kind of the university level of voiceover training. I honestly mean that, run by the most ethical and wonderful people, who also started this voiceover conference, the One Voice and the One Voice Awards. And so I said, you know, this is something I can stand behind fully. This is something that I want to associate myself with. And I started doing that. So when when the first conference was starting, Hugh reached out to me and said, Paul, can we talk about it? Maybe you find it interesting. Maybe you want to write something in your blog about it. And I found it interesting. I wrote about it and people responded to it. And since then, every year when they have a new conference, we get in touch. Every year when they have new products or services, we get in touch. And it's kind of my way of, I know it's a cliche, but it's my way of giving back of how much these guys are giving us as a community and me as a person.
That's fantastic.
And to tell you, this goes beyond, and I'm getting a little bit emotional here, but this goes way beyond talking about the business and voiceovers. Because when I was in the depths of misery in my hospital bed, thinking that I would never talk again, because that was one of the things the stroke did to me, I lost my voice, the ability to speak, to emote even. One of the first people to reach out to me and say, hey, hi, buddy, how are you doing, was Hugh Edwards. And he's kept on doing that ever since. Every couple of months or so, we check in with each other and say, how are you doing? And that has meant the world to me. So when you mention Gravy for the Brain, I will walk on fire for them, on hot coals for them, and do anything I can to help them and spread the message. And I can't say enough good things about them.
Wow.
And by the way, this was not a paid promotion, because I don't get paid by them either when I write the stuff, because it's free publicity. But it's really us working together, promoting something for the betterment of society.
Yeah.
Because I think there's too many people who are of ill repute who take advantage of impressionable people.
Definitely.
And they are not. They are, as I say here, the real deal. But it's true. I joke about it, but I think you know what I'm talking about. You know, just when someone like you being associated with them as well, doing this podcast series with people who are all in some way linked to Gravy for the Brain, that is a great tribute to the organization that they have built. And then they have this worldwide expansion as well. So they didn't want to keep it confined to the UK. No, the goodies must be spread all around the world. So in every geographical region, like the Oceania, you have Gravy for the Brain aficionados. So you create more than just voiceovers, because we can talk frankly, right? What we do is not really about voiceovers at all. I think it's really, this discussion that we're having to this interview is not really about voiceovers. It's about living up to who you're meant to be as a person, you know, about what makes life worthwhile and fulfilling. And for me, it's wonderful if I can be a doctor in a script that will promote certain medications that can save lives. That's wonderful. But it's ultimately the people that you meet in life who have an impact on you. And you learn a lot about yourself through your voice, because you can't hide anything. The voice will reveal everything, whether you're tired, whether you're just in a divorce or have gone through a stroke or anything. Your voice cannot hide anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're very raw. We expose ourselves. We become vulnerable. We have to deal with criticism all the time, with rejection all the time. You know, it's the uncertainty of making it through another week or another month. This really throws you back at who you are, and you got to be strong to survive as a one person business. And it's a lonely business, of course, because you're there in your new and improved studio, and I'm here in the middle of nowhere in Vermont, and not really anyone to talk to but our buddies. No, but it's a lonely existence that very few people could really stand, because we are social beings. We need water cooler conversations and be with one another, and you don't really have that unless you find a community of people that are like you, that know what you're going through, and are not only there professionally, but say, how are you doing, buddy? I heard you were in the hospital. If there's anything I can do, let me know. I can do it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So
and the voice industry, like I've been really struck every time I've gone to one of the One Voice conferences or just reached out to anyone in voiceover, is that there is this genuine connection that everyone in a working voiceover seems to have with each other. And we don't, like, it's a competitive game in a way, but I like the fact that when someone wins a job against you, it's not that they did better than you; it's that they were more suited to the job. So there's actually any competitiveness is kind of faux competitiveness because we're all just doing our best, and sometimes we're not right for the role, and that's totally fine. And that's the attitude I think that people need to walk into it with, is that, it's about making yourself, more appropriate for different kinds of jobs. But I'm fascinated, and I really love that I found this industry that does have so much warmth, and there's so much genuine connection in.
There's so much unpretentiousness. I know it's not a word, but people are unpretentious.
Exactly, yeah.
And because I noticed that when I worked in radio, and I worked for this big broadcasting company in the Netherlands, and there were two departments, radio and television. And both had nice people, but they're very different people. People in television were much more aware of their personality because they were in the picture literally all the time. They were recognized on the streets. And they became very recluse because they didn't want to be bothered by everybody. So they became not so nice persons, but always very, very aware of what they would look like, how they would sound like. And they did not become themselves. And we, voiceover and radio people, nobody sees us, people only hear us. And we're kind of the anonymous workers in the entertainment industry, the disembodied voices. So this whole thing about, oh, look at me and this big ego is not really here. Well, there are a few big egos in the voiceover industry, but they deserved it, and rightly so. They can be proud of what they have achieved, but not as many as you find in the more visual arts. And that's what I always loved about the voiceover thing, the unpretentiousness of it all. Because at the end, it's so fragile, and it's so easily forgotten. People say, "Oh my God, did this big commercial." I had to get used to it when I came to the United States. People were proud of doing a commercial. Yeah. And I said, "Okay, great, you did a commercial for bathroom tissue. So what?
Put it on my gravestone."
I know that doesn't really impress me. But it's a national commercial for bathroom tissue. Everybody heard me. Oh well, okay, great. What did you do for mankind today? And it's to me, it's very oriented about money and status. And if you want to forget about your status, just get yourself a stroke. Nothing is worth anything anymore. It comes back to the very simple things in life that make me going, and probably make you going too. Because there's a reason why you do the EMT thing too. Because there's more to life than voiceovers. Sorry, people. There's more to life than voiceovers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's being there for one another when it matters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I think like when I was about to talk about advice for beginner voiceovers and coaching and things like that, and going onto your book, but like when people are coming into the industry, like I say to them, this is definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme. You may see voiceover artists getting paid, a stupendous amount for one commercial, but they've spent 10 years getting to that point. And they've done most of that because they absolutely love it. And they were doing it even if they weren't getting paid, which probably was happening anyway, because I know that, if I won the lottery or ceased the need for money, I would still do this because I get such a kick out of it. And I think it has to be that way. And, doing auditions, everyone should be fun. It shouldn't be a total chore. Do you sort of concur with that? You've always found it gives you strength, and that's the advice you give?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I have to laugh because it is something that makes you happy. And if you do what makes you happy, you have a rich life. And that's, to me, is the main thing, to have a rich life in more ways than just monetary compensation. I mean, I'm not going to lie about it. I can make a very decent and comfortable living, so it's really easy for me to say. But I've been in the trenches. I've been a waiter in a restaurant. I know how hard that is. And so I really started from a big unknown to somebody that is sought out by clients. And when you look at successful people, you just look at the result and not at the road that took them there. It's like, you go to a concert. I love classical music, and you see this wonderful classical pianist. Make it seem seamless, easy to do. Piano concerto, Beethoven, Brahms. They just, it seems like, you're such a natural talent. But what we don't see is the many, many, many hours and hardships these people have to go through. I tell people there's no success without sacrifice. Sorry, you got to sacrifice. You got to want it more than anybody else in the world, because otherwise You're not going to get there. One of my friends is a classical pianist, and I knew he was going to be famous. Do you know why? Because every morning he went to the conservatory. He didn't have a grand piano at his home, but they had pianos for the pianist, and he was the first one in line to be able to open that door to get himself a grand piano so he could practice for a couple of hours a day. That's the spirit. Yeah. That's the spirit. That's what you have to have. You really, really have to want it, not something on the side, not as some hobby or pastime. You really have to want it. And you have to know that it involves much more than talking into the microphone. I'm pointing at a microphone which you can't see, but hello. Hi. It's not about that really. At the end of the day, we know that's only 20% of the work. If I could do 20% of the work 100% of the time, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
We all got to do the boring stuff, but everybody wants to do the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And becoming successful is having to do and wanting to do the stuff that you think is not so fun, but in the end could be very fun too, like attracting clients through writing a blog. You got to find something that really works for you and that sets you apart.
Or making videos.
Like making videos,
internet,
exactly.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, yeah.
It's funny. It's funny you use the example of a classical pianist, because I often say to, like, one of my examples is, like, because people come to, I run voiceover courses in person occasionally, and people say, when will I start making money from this? Or like, when can I expect a return on my investment? And it's kind of like, if you've just decided to start a new career, like in something creative, it's a bit like deciding to like learn the grand piano. It's like if someone went to a music teacher and said, right, when can I make my money back on these lessons? They'd be like, well, that depends on how much effort you put in, how naturally good you are, like, if you've got the drive and determination, like so many factors. And I feel like with voiceover, they just expect to like, I can read already, I sound pretty good, I'm basically ready. When it's just, there's this behind the curtain is so much more that people don't understand.
Oh, yes. It's the whole Wizard of Oz situation. There's a lot going on behind the curtain that you don't see. But
Yeah. What was the experience of writing the book like, actually? Like,
that was very easy because it was already written.
Right.
It's basically a collection of my old blogs. That's what it is.
Okay.
Really.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and I was a bit like, I wasn't sure because it says making money on your PJs. It sounds like it's easy.
Yes.
Were you worried about that title, that it would say, like, they would sound a bit too easy and people would read it and think by the end of the book they could be making money in their PJs? Or are they horribly disappointed?
I had to find something really silly and catchy. Right. That was the only reason why I chose it.
Yeah.
And
actually, incidentally, I almost always wear PJs when I work at night, when I'm doing voiceovers. So it is
I'm
true.
wearing PJs right now because it's bloody early in the morning. I just came out of bed. No, honestly, that's the whole deal about it. I had to find a silly hook that people would remember me by. And so I could do have a sustainable career in voiceovers or make $1,000 a month as a voiceover artist. And that was utterly boring. The best things come out of the most silly things. So I woke up one morning, had to go to the studio, didn't care to get dressed. I said, this is the best job ever. I don't even have to wear normal clothes. I can do this in my PJs.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, there it is. Yeah. Making money in your PJs. And I kind of addressed that in the first chapter as well, that it is, in fact, nothing like easy money at all. I mean, you can do this in your PJs, and you probably will, and you should. I can highly recommend it. But, you really have to put on your big boy pants and big girl pants to make a dent in the universe of voice acting. So it's not as easy. So it's kind of playful. I play with the ideas, and I often, that's not a good quality of mine, but I mock people a little bit. I preach a little bit because I'm the son of a minister. And,
yeah, it's in the blood.
So I try to mock people who want to make things look like it's quick and easy, and it never is. Everything that you think is quick and easy never is, because otherwise everybody would do it and everybody would be successful at it, and it's not. So yes, my approach is really to be treating this very, very, very seriously, but with a lot of fun. I had a pleasure that I had a background in radio, which is not always an advantage. But my radio career has helped me tremendously. As a freelancer, running the business as a business, of course, but also in the whole thing about approaching people in a business. Because as a roaming reporter, you have to talk to people that don't want to talk to you. You have to talk them into doing an interview. They have to do the interview. Then you have to cut and paste it and put it in bite-sized pieces. And all of these things come together as a voice artist. Because I had to talk to lots of people who were not intent on hiring me, but I had to convince them, like Mel Blanc, by the way. There's a nice segue. He knocked on the doors of Warner Brothers for 2 years. And the guy who was hiring voiceover said, sorry, we have all the voices we need. But he kept on coming back and back and back again until the guy who was in charge of hiring the voices died. Somebody else got in his place. And he said, Mel Blanc, you know what? Let's have coffee. Let's hear your voices. And that's how he got in the door. And the second job he did was the voice of a pig, which became Porky Pig. So you need this persistence, this kind of, I don't care whatever the outcome is, I'm doing it anyway thing. Even though you know that everything depends on it. You have to work as if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you become too desperate. You don't want to be too desperate.
No, exactly. Yeah.
You don't. Another thing you shouldn't do is invest lots of money and lots of expensive equipment in the beginning. And it's become, thank goodness, a lot easier to start in this business because you can buy a new microphone for $200, like the Rode NT1s. Perfectly fine voiceover microphone, super quiet.
And the Focusrite, Scarlett series, they're incredibly good value for their sound these days. Like go back 5 years, that was just not possible. So yeah.
I know it's really been amazing how that has how the technology has cheapened in a way, and so it's easy to get started. But I am a frequent visitor of eBay, and I can recognize a voice artist who has given up his dream. the equipment that they post.
The package, exactly, the package that's online. It's like, here's some Rode NT1A.
So sad.
It's so Focusrite Solo, some headphones. So
comes with a free pop filter.
Exactly, yeah. So you've got a new book coming out, you were telling me before. What's this one? Making lots of money in your PJs.
Don't wear anything. The naked voiceover. I haven't found a catchy title yet, but some people said I should put my big fat face on the cover. That will sell a lot. But I was going to call it the self-sustaining voiceover because that's the big thing that I teach people and that I advocate in my blog as well, to become self-sustaining. It's a sustaining career, not just a fling. But it sounds boring, so I got to find something else. So if you have any suggestions, please write to Gravy of the Brain, attention to Mr. Paul Strikwerda, middle of nowhere, Vermont, USA. And will get to me straight away, and I'll give you credits. But it's really about what it takes to become a self-sustaining voiceover. So what's going to be is really a couple of years ago, I noticed that the subscribership to my blog was stagnating, and I thought that I had reached the limit of people that I could reach because we have a very small community. I only have 40,000 subscribers, which is nothing really compared to the big bloggers. But a lot of people who blog say, "Whoa, 40,000! That's a whole lot of things." But I want at least have 400,000. And 4 million, why not? $4 billion subscribers. So I said I had to tap into a new market, and I started doing microblogs under the name of Nethervoice on Instagram. And Instagram gives you about 2,200 characters to write a story. And so I do a mini blog every single day about the business. So it's something that you can read in a minute. So what I'm going to do for this new book is just have bite-sized pieces that you can read at the beginning or the end of the day, or just in between when you take a break, when you need like a vitamin shot in the arm, a little energy boost.
That's cool.
About running a business, about doing voiceovers, about being a good person.
Yeah, nice. That's a good idea. Because I often would need something that's like, while my audio is processing or something, I need something that's like a minute long, just to pass that time, so I'm not just staring at the progress bar. Yeah,
because people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. So, I tend to write these lengthy blogs that it takes you 7 minutes, all of 7 minutes to read. But I try to be a little bit thorough. And so if you like the small parts, I try to convert people to come to my website and eventually read my blog. And that's been working. I'm tapping into a new and younger audience. The Instagram people are coming to my blog because if you want to have a more in-depth story, you can read the full story on my blog. But these short things, I think I caught on to something there. And so the nice thing for me is that it's basically already written. Now, the big trick about being a good writer is not being a good writer, but it's about being a good rewriter. You have to edit your own work and make it even better. So I'm in that process now, selecting out of all the pieces that I've had, something that is not as voluminous as Making Money in the PJs, because that is a chunk of a book. Because I noticed that some people, let me get it here. Let's do some self-promotion.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have to mess with the scenery here now.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. What is it?
Wow.
Oh,
that was candid.
See, I always work with the very sturdy equipment.
Exactly.
Nothing but the best for me.
You saw it first.
This is a gobo.
VO Live.
This is from GIK Acoustics. Yeah. You put it together. You have a bass panel.
Yeah.
You do it like this. Then you have something.
Clever. You can stand it up, a bit like a Japanese screen or something.
Exactly. Yes.
Very
so
good.
this is Zabo.
Oh, it is thick, isn't it?
It is very thick. It has too many pages. when I peddled this around for a couple of voiceover friends that I wanted to have their input from, and they said, Paul, this will never sell because it's too long. And I look at the last page, it's 423 bloody pages.
Wow, yeah. You could build a bookshelf out of those books.
I know, but as you can see, there's a lot of white space too.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
because I like to make things in bite-sized paragraphs. But so my promise, my dear readers, my next book is going to be a lot shorter. And sweeter, I hope.
Yeah, I do like the short form, I think. Like, I'm going to subscribe to your Instagram as well, if I'm not already, to catch those blogs, because that sounds very interesting.
It's just easy at Nethervoice, and you'll get something every day. And in fact, today I'm writing about the birthday of a certain voice artist.
Oh, who is it?
Who we talked about at the beginning. Yeah. Surprise, surprise, yes.
So you often blog on technology, voiceover technology, which is one of my passions. I just love technology associated with voiceover. I love helping people with the technology because, like, some people find it really difficult, and I just find it so easy and easy to explain that I just want to help people with it because it reaffirms the knowledge of myself as well. And actually, due to your article about the U87 mic clones, I ordered one, and I hoped it would be here by the time we did this interview, but it's still in transit.
Oh, man.
But I'm really, because I've got a U87 here, and I want to put them side by side. There it is.
Yes,
I want to absolutely do an article that just picks every detail and masks it, because by all accounts, it works really well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm very keen to.
100% fake.
So I'll send you my test results side by side of the real thing and those, because it sounds like there's not much in it, which is interesting. But you've blogged what's your favorite thing about studio sound? Is it mics, interfaces, computers, or the whole lot?
There's nothing that I don't like, really. I love playing around with them. It's just my excuse to toy around with things and have manufacturers send me free stuff.
Oh, I need to get into
No,
that.
I have this thing too that I'm on a mission to educate my readers and educate myself, really, because there's so much great stuff being made right now. Take, for instance, a company like Austrian Audio, which just came out of AKG and Lewitt. And
There are, aren't they? Yeah.
I always love discovering things that were not used by others, because if there's something I hate is that people say, this is the industry standard, so you must have the industry standard, otherwise you don't count as a voiceover artist. Well, there's so much great stuff. The Rode NTG5 and the shotgun microphone is wonderful.
Like the 416.
I think it's way better than the 416 and way cheaper too. Yeah. So why not test that? And so I wanted to give people an idea of there's so much more than going for the TLM 103 or the MKH 416 or the U87. So out of my own curiosity, I started writing about it. And then I got in touch with a guy who runs a big microphone database on the internet. Oh, yeah. And he now runs a company called Roswell Audio, where he's making his own microphones. And as I'm talking about it, I'm trying to think about the name of that website. It's a big microphone database. Anyway, he invited me to start writing for him and test microphones. So that's what I did. And I said, if I test for him and write stuff about it, I might as well do it for myself too and put it on my blog. And that's what I did. And the nice thing is that once you write honest reviews, people recognize that. And and manufacturers too. And I try to write about it in a non-technical way because I'm not a George Whittam, who is one of the experts on home studio building and technology. I'm not a sound engineer like Uncle Roy Yokelson is, or Dan Leonard, Those are people who approach it often from a more technical side. I just use my voiceover ears in my voiceover surroundings and say, what would work, what wouldn't break the bank, and what makes this microphone different from other microphones, and what do I think would be a good bet for people? Because I hate people spending money on things that they don't know how to use yet, or that they go broke on equipment that they don't even need.
Yeah, exactly. Like people buying U87s because it's the industry standard, and it's like, it's so overpowered in terms of like what you need. And you also like the thing about like when I bought this U87, I was in my old booth, and it sounded terrible in that old booth because I designed it around a 416, so it was super directional. All the soundproofing was on one end. Bit of cardioid comes in and starts picking up all of the room ambience. And it's one of those mics that's brutally honest as well. If you don't have a good space, it just does not sound good. So it was a real like wake up call for me in terms of like, don't just spend the earth and then it doesn't just deliver suddenly a great voiceover. It's like that's when the work starts, and then you can go further with, I think, these mics, and they're very dependable. But in terms of sound, it doesn't save you any money at all. Like it won't get you gigs.
It will expose all your flaws.
It will,
that's what it does.
Yeah.
And so a lot of microphones are much more flattering. But what's happened since COVID is that a lot of people have entered the market. They all thought, this is the best job to be doing from your basement or your attic. So we've had a lot of new voiceovers, which I don't mind. Everybody is allowed to chase his own or her own dream. Mm-hmm. But in order to separate the wheat from the chaff, some agents have said, well, you're not going to be added to my roster unless you have this and that type of equipment. Yeah. So people buy Apollo preamplifiers and the whole package with their plugins, and they have the 416 and the TLM 103 and the U87. Otherwise, you're not on the map and you're not taking your job seriously, which I think is nonsense. But it is kind of a badge of honor, and you say, oh, look what I can afford to. I've landed. So on one hand, people can tell whether you're serious or not by the equipment that you have. And so I ran into this problem because I had this wonderful shotgun microphone called the Synco D2, all made in China.
I've heard about this, the 416
I paid $156, but retails normally for $250. Yeah. And honestly, I can't tell the difference between the D2 and the 416. Maybe my ears are not refined enough. But you know what? Clients are not listening on refined equipment either. So I think it's often a moot point. But so I was using that one, and I was landing big jobs, and nobody ever said, "Oh, you sounds like you're using a cheap Chinese microphone."
Yeah.
But then it became time to get to a different space in Vermont now, and I thought it would be time to upgrade my microphone a little bit, and I wanted to find another shotgun microphone, and I ended up with this one. This is the Sennheiser MKH 8060, which is the successor to the famous 416. Very short one too. I'm not going to unplug it because then you won't be able to hear me. But it's like, look, this.
It's like half the length, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a baby. Yeah,
like the 415,
and
which
it
I
works
think
for me.
405, I think. The 405. They did a version of the 416 that was like shorter, but yeah. And I think the longer the barrel is, the more the interference tube is, the more sharp and the more like pronounced the hypercardioid effect is.
Yes, just like.
Yeah, it really is just like laser focused the longer you get, but it becomes unwieldy at a certain point. It's like once it's 20 feet long, it's kind of impractical.
Exactly. Now it's out of the way. When you do a lot of social media, you don't want this big microphone in front of your face. So it works really nice in its direction.
I like this one in front of my face, though. This is my it's. I feel like there's this culture that's grown up around microphones. Like it's the same reason that like Conan O'Brien and they put a microphone on their desk. It gives it's a visual indicator of like, this is a microphone. This is what you expect when you see a voiceover. And I've kind of like, I took that and thought like with my whole like Zoom background, it was like, let's market this space.
That's a background? That's fake?
Oh, no, that's real. It's all real.
No, that's real, right?
But
is it a Fender Rhodes I see?
It is, it's Fender Rhodes, yeah.
Man, do you play?
Yeah, suitcase Rhodes. I play keys, absolutely. Yeah, and a little bit of bass on the wall there as well, somewhere.
fantastic.
And drink whiskey in the background. So all my interests are represented, around around my head, along with the voiceover.
Summarizing all that's gravy for the brain is about, making music, drinking good whiskey, and enjoying a nice microphone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
fantastic.
no,
We better wrap it up soon because you'll be getting to your workday soon, and it's and we've well exceeded the 60
it's
minutes.
Memorial Day in the United States. Here, Memorial Day.
Right.
We celebrate and honor the people who lost their lives for their country. So we got fun and games, because when America celebrates something, it's always fun and games, no matter whether it's Memorial Day or not.
Yeah.
So that means discounts in the stores. You gotta buy.
Yeah.
And we have parades. We have these poor veterans who are like 80, 90, 100 years old, and we parade them around the town.
Trolley
We make them
out.
walk for a couple of miles, and at the end, they have to listen to speeches that never end, and then they have to eat and drink again and buy stuff.
Yeah.
That's
For another year.
but,
Buy stuff is the rule. Yeah. Keep it all going.
Yeah.
Keep it all going.
Absolutely. So on this Veterans Day, buy my book. Now here's one thing I want to do,
Yeah.
because you've been so nice to me and given me all this time to talk about myself and about Mel Blanc and all these things. So if you're watching this interview right now and you think that what you've heard is interesting and silly and absurd, but also, hey, I'd like to hear more or learn more, please write to me, please, at paul@nethervoice.com. It's one word, nether as in Netherlands, voice as in voice, paul@nethervoice.com. Reference this interview, and I will send you a free digital copy of my book, a PDF version, which is I have to warn you, even longer, because everything I didn't put in the printed version. It's like 600 pages of me.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. There you go,
Yeah.
watchers and
Covering
listeners.
every aspect of the voiceover business.
Fantastic.
And I write stuff that people don't like to hear. So I can be honest, but brutally honest, but fair, I think.
Yeah.
But so, paul@nethervoice.com. Reference this interview. Even if you hear this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I will still be there, hopefully. I can send you a PDF copy of the book for free, just as a way to say thank you for putting up with me all this time.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me, and all the best with your Veterans Day celebrations.
Well, my father-in-law is a veteran, and he will be all dressed up, and I will be applauding him, which is very wonderful to do. So it's I make fun of it, but it's a serious thing too. I think that we should give credit to the people who put their lives on the line, and we as voiceovers live such a protective, secluded life here. It's not an easy job, but in many ways it's a very comfortable job.
I do feel like gratitude is very important in this job in terms of you work hard for it, but you do when you get there. It's nice to really sort of to give thanks for it and acknowledge.
The reason you and I can do what we do in our freedom is because we owe a lot to these people. And with all joking apart, I really mean that I'm glad that I have an opportunity a day to honor these people. And really, I think we should have every day a day like that where we honor the people who gave everything without expecting anything. So on this somber note, we have to say with Mel Blanc, that's all, folks. Thank you, Toby. It was a joy.
Thanks, Paul. It absolutely was. Cheers.
Bye.